And welcome back to our live coverage of the Mackinac Policy Conference. We are wrapping things up, and there's no better way to wrap things up than with the CEO of the Detroit Regional Chamber, Sandy Barua. Sandy, it's good to see you again.
Thanks for having me back.
And Dennis Archer Jr., who is the chair of this year's conference. Dennis, congratulations on a very successful conference and a lot of positive energy that a lot of people were sharing with us when they stopped by the desk.
It was fantastic. I mean, we had record numbers of people attend the conference. We had full theater, back-to-back panels and speakers, very few people exiting. The programming that the staff assembled this year, I think, was phenomenal. And we touched upon a lot of the key issues, both nationally and locally. And I think we weaved in some phenomenal local folks who influence the community who've not been on the main stage before, but added to that and embellished that with some national speakers. I think it went very well.
What do you think, Sandy, or how are some of your thoughts and some of the feedback you're getting from everyone?
So first of all, I gotta say, Dennis made it fun. I mean, we've had great chairs, but Dennis gave us a great energy, a great vibe, and by far the best shoe collection of any chair that we've had.
Well,
if you're following my Twitter feed, right? Listen, it was a fabulous conference. I mean, our goal at this conference is not to shy away from the tough issues, but also, since this is Michigan's one opportunity to come together, let's try to focus on the positives because we're trying to build Michigan, not tear down Michigan, right? And I think we walked that balance really well. We hit DPS head on and we talked about those issues. We talked about school financing. That was an issue on and off the stage. We talked about Flint every day. There was something about Flint, including Dr. Hannah Mona Atisha or Dan Kildee or the mayor of Flint, and thank you for moderating that panel. I thought that was fantastic. We raised a lot of money for the child fund in Flint. But at the same time, as we discussed those really tough issues, we talked about the positives that we have with next generation mobility, the positives that we have in terms of the innovation out of our defense industry.
Dennis, what do you think, because you mentioned some of the voices that we usually don't hear up on Mackinac Island. Tell me specifically who you're talking about and what were some of the things that stood out to you. One of the things that stood out to me was your interview with Dan Gilbert and sitting down with him.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. I mean, with all the positive things that Dan's doing down in the Detroit community, it was kind of, in my opinion, in my words, a glaring omission that he has not been up to the conference in the past. And he's had different business rationales as to why he couldn't make it. So I think having him here made the conference more complete. I also think that people have certain misconceptions or don't ever really get a chance to know Dan. And so I found him to be very relaxed and very candid in how he addressed the issues and the questions. And so I think it not only helped the conference by making us more whole, I think it helped him as well by allowing people to get a little bit inside of Dan Gilbert.
And who else were you thinking about on the stage? What else stood out in your mind?
I thought that on the inclusion panel moderated by Soledad, I think that panel was great because you had a national journalist who has a series on race and inclusion, but then you also had a Wendell Anthony, who's the head of NAACP, who's been up here for years, who's never been on stage. You had Sheila Cockrell, former 16-year city council person, who's very much rooted in that history of the topic that we were discussing. And then Sebastian Jackson, who was on that panel as well, who's a 29-year-old entrepreneur who's really the next generation of entrepreneurial leadership in the city of Detroit. He did a great job. I also really loved, and Sandy, I didn't get a chance to go to the future casting session, but Brian David Johnson coming on talking about future casting and challenging ourselves to look more forward into the future. If you look at some of the challenges that we face, and we talk about Flint and DPS, how can we look at what's happening today and then look far into the future and then act upon what we see or what we think we'll see to ensure those things don't happen again?
Yeah, some of the bigger picture issues, because it seems like every year up on Mackinac, there are always some immediate policy issues that are also being talked about right here in the parlor at the same time that we're hearing about sessions saying, let's think big picture, let's think larger about where we're going to be in 5 to 10 years from now. So we're not constantly just working on the issue that's directly in front of our face and trying to solve that problem, put that fire out, but saying, okay, how can we make education better in the state of Michigan going forward?
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to the mobility industry about that because, the automotive industry is transforming right before our very eyes. I mean, it's moving from a product-based industry to a service-based industry. The technology in these vehicles is going to transform dramatically, and we need to be prepared for that. And that is not a tomorrow thing. That is a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year thing. It's going to transform our society.
One thing that also stood out to me, that's now stood out to me the last couple of years, is Mayor Mike Duggan's presence here on the island and his speech that he's given now at the end of the end of the first day. He continues, I think, to really draw crowds into what he's doing in the city of Detroit, and backing it up. And I know he made fun of the fact that you're like, no PowerPoint, what's the slides, the facts, But he
It really threw me under the bus, I thought.
But he continues to be able to, to show people is very direct in what he wants to do. What do you think about his role here? I'll start with you, Dennis.
I think it's incredible. I mean, I do think that the past couple of years when he's done his metric-based presentation, I think it was needed at that time because, you have to, if you can't measure it, oftentimes people say it never happened. And so I think that approach was great. But I also think, to Sandy's point, evolving out of that approach to really talk about what he's going to do and how he's going to do it is phenomenal. I mean, when he showed Sandy of the 5,000 houses that they own and they're trying to sell that have been fixed up in the before and after pictures, it's very, very positive. And the good thing about this mayor is that he not only says what he's going to do, he very specifically articulates how he's going to do it. And it's credible and it's believable. We're exposed now, and he does it. And we're exposed now on the national political scene with some candidates that, make these lofty promises about what they're going to do if they're elected with no plan, no specificity behind it whatsoever. And this mayor is very specific and very direct.
Sandy, again, Governor Snyder, this is a huge event for him as well, and he's very much involved in the content of what's going on, and he's on stage all 3 days. It was a different tone a little bit for him this year when he came on stage. How do you feel that the governor impacted the conference this year with everything that he has had to deal with Flint and DPS?
Well, there's a couple metrics I look at. First of all, we had 2 standing ovations the entire conference. One was for Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha. The other one was for Governor Snyder. And I think that really shows, the affection and the support that this governor still has with, the business community and the leadership of the state. Yes, there are issues, and, Flint is the big flashing red light. No one likes the way that was handled. But overall, there's a lot to celebrate. And I think he handled his time on stage very, very well, talking about Flint and those challenges, but but taking the opportunity to remind everyone, one, the positives that have happened here. I mean, we now have an unemployment rate in the state of Michigan below the national average. Who would have thunk it, right? And where the opportunities before us.
All right, let's get to that big to-do list that you guys unveiled just a short time ago. So talk to me about what went into creating it. First of all, Dennis, let me start with you.
I mean, I think every year, I think it's a fallacy. People think that we come up to the island knowing what the to-dos are. I mean, the to-dos organically evolve out of the discussions that happen on the stage during the 4 days that we're here. And so I think that if you look at where our focuses were, the automobile industry, our Mission Auto Initiative, mobility, autonomous vehicles, focusing on inclusion, on financial literacy, which is carryover from last year. A lot of panels about investing in our assets. We talked about the automobile industry. Again, we talked about the defense industry. And so if you just follow the discussions that happen, I think one could even probably, people in the audience could probably have come up with these themselves, recognizing what we talked about.
Pretty clear this year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of talk about defense, which I thought was very interesting, saying, look, sometimes we take for granted what we have actually in this state, and we need to protect it.
Yeah, it's $1 billion of economic activity for the state of Michigan. So one of our to-do items actually is to help the state of Michigan develop and execute a strategy to protect and grow our valuable defense assets. We have to do that. I mean, we've got thousands upon thousands of people involved in here. The Detroit Arsenal is a huge economic driver. And what it means for the automotive industry is huge, because that partnership between the defense industry that's based in Michigan and the automotive companies is huge.
All right, and so I also want to point out infrastructure issues, again, to start to concentrate on that. Dennis, where did that come from for you?
I mean, I think it's fairly obvious. And infrastructure, to me, not only means physical infrastructure, roads, bridges, underwater water connectivity, but I think it's also schools and other supportive mechanisms that we need to attract business, to attract people to live in Detroit, to start rebuilding our population. And so I think it's a huge focus. And I think that that's both a here and now issue, right, that you talked about. That's also looking forward to try to understand, what are we going to need to do as it relates to investing in infrastructure over the next 15, 20 years. I give the analogy, my house was built in 1920. I can either each year reinvest a little bit into that house, or I can wait till there's a significant issue and it's going to be very costly at that time. And I may not be able to afford it at that time.
Right. All right, we have 30 seconds left, so I'm going to each ask you for your final thoughts from this entire week. Sandy, I'm going to start with you.
It is a unique honor to be able to host this conference. It is Michigan center stage. We get 1,600 of Michigan's top leadership in a very unique environment, and the fact that we bring all walks of life together here from all parts of the state to have a common conversation, hugely invaluable.
Final word, Dennis.
I'm just very happy that everyone seemed to engage in honest and candid solution-oriented discussion up here. I honestly believe that when we go back down south or throughout the state and people disperse, that people are going to be very action-oriented.
All right, Dennis Archer Jr., Sandy Barua, thank you so much for joining me, and I guess we'll see you next year up here on Mackinac Island.
It's a date.
And that is going to do it for us. Thanks so much for watching Detroit Public Television's coverage of the 2016 Mackinac Policy Conference. For all of us at Detroit Public TV, our crew that's been working up here at the Grand Hotel all week long, I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next year for Mackinac. Now it's time for me to go downtown and get some fudge. See you later.